Hello, Dr. Simmons. How are you?
I am great. Thanks for having me here.
Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Let's see, you've been a doctor for how many years?
I got my MD in 1969.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
way back. Like I said to you before, I'm almost as old as Spam.
You were also a medical reporter for KABC in LA radio. Yeah.
Yeah, once a week for I don't remember how long, but for quite a while, I come on, and sometimes I was interviewed, and sometimes we interviewed other people. And then I got on KPNW here in Eugene, Oregon, for a while as a medical reporter, and then I had a show on KUGN with another host for 7 years called Doc Talk, and we took callers and we interviewed people. So I've done a fair amount of radio work. I don't do the switches and knobs and all that, but I've been there on the mic many times.
Okay. What kind of stuff did you do? I mean, what did they ask you? Was it like new drugs that came out or new viruses or what would you report on exactly?
Yeah, sometimes it was exactly what was in the news, talking about what's in the news, interviewing experts on it. If a new specialist came into town, that it was a specialist that we didn't have or was able to did do procedures that nobody else could do, we'd bring them in. Occasionally, politicians of sort or people who are working in government to talk about what's going on behind the scenes, but mostly talking to docs and other providers. We talk to chiropractors and naturopaths. I've had some celebrities. I remember Eric Burton from the Animals. That goes way back.
Oh, yeah.
He had a funny idea about venereal disease, that it was a mindset. It wasn't something else like we know it to be, but he may have been on something that was set his mind at the time, but that's a standout one. But yeah, and anybody passing through town who might be significantly related to health issues, yeah. And so occasionally you didn't have anybody; we just took callers.
Okay. It says on your bio you were also on the Steve Allen show at one time.
Yeah, I was. I was when I was in my residency one night. I got called to help a student or intern very late at night with a patient, and he was picking something up off the floor. And as he stood up, I said, "Holy cow, you look like Steve Allen." He says, "I am Steve Allen. I'm Steve Allen Jr." And so that began a friendship with Steve Allen's son. And when I was involved in some public work fighting venereal disease in a sense, trying to get publicity for it, donations, and the word out, because in those days you couldn't even say those words on the air, specific words, or even Playboy magazine wouldn't write about it. Of course, that wasn't good for business. And so we had several people working on this, and I headed it up, and I got in trouble with the archdiocese in LA because it was talking about venereal disease in the public and all that stuff. Anyway, so I made a little bit of a name for myself, and Steve Jr. got me invited to Steve Allen's show. I was on with Lanny Kazan and I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a comedian, crazy comedian, died a long time ago. You'd probably recognize the name, but I'm blanking. So yeah, that was fun, interesting. Um, no
Not
claim to
not Lenny Bruce.
no. This guy, he made sounds. He wore funny clothes. He wasn't a clown, and boy, I maybe it'll come to me. I can see him very well, but sorry, I can't tell you who it is. But
Yeah.
it's a name was known back then, and he was kind of funny. Um, but yeah, Steve Allen had me on talking about what we were doing, and then just kept me as a guest, and yeah, it was fun.
What year was that? Do you remember?
Yeah, it would be somewhere between 71 and 74,
Okay.
probably 71.
All right. So you've got a book out. Are we here to recreate ourselves? The Convergence of Design by Dr. Jeffrey Simmons. Uh, Tell us basically what the book is about. Is this your first book or have you written many books?
It's my 10th.
10th. Okay. Tell us a little bit about it.
It's a third of a series regarding intelligent design. The first was What Darwin Didn't Know. The second one was millions, rather billions of missing links. And this one's called are we here to recreate ourselves? And it's not a book on plastic surgery or makeup or any other way to exercise. That's what some people interpret it as, oddly, but it has to do with our purpose here, and some patterns that I detect in the history of humans, basically. And so there are purposes that are people, if you're religious, for sure, glorify God and follow God's sayings and read the Bible on and on along that line. If you're not, or you're not very religious, it's to maybe have a family, be successful, be healthy, something in between, helping the poor, helping the lame, that type of thing. So there's a lot of purposes we can all have, but it looks like one of our purposes might be to recreate ourselves, to make basically robots that look like us for a purpose. And I go back to the history of, like, from glass on the beach from a lightning strike all the way up to robot vision. I trace all the technology for hearing to robot hearing. I trace all the history of computers going back to counting on your fingers and abacus and early computers and AI to come and AI presently. And you put it all together in a package and you make it look like a person. And everything we seem to be doing, making statues, making mannequins, making robots, there's a pattern all the way up, and these robots are starting to look like us and act like us. And surely it's easy to see they're going to get better and better at that. And so why are we doing this? Well, one possibility, a strong possibility, is to go to outer space. We humans, with the technology we have, probably cannot go beyond Mars. I think Mars is an incredible stretch, 3 years each way, 6 to 9 months there. We know that there's cosmic radiation, and all the cosmonauts or astronauts come back with obvious changes on their MRIs. They come back with terrible dizziness. Since gravity is not present or barely present, they end up with swelling in their head and all kinds of problems related to that, and particularly vision. And that goes away for the most part. One of the astronauts was a twin of an astronaut who didn't go up. He came back at different height. He came back with lots of back problems. And so we don't know what it'll do to people who haven't had children yet with all the cosmic radiation. So we're going to probably have to send our lookalikes further than Mars, unless technology, all of a sudden we get Star Trek technology. And so who's going to volunteer? Not me, to go 10 years into a lab, see if they can keep me asleep, and in 10 years wake me up so I can function. And we can't do that more than a few hours or a night or two to somebody. And it's really not suspended animation, or not that, but putting them to sleep while they're still alive. So not only do we want to go further in outer space, but we want to have whoever finds us out there, maybe an extraterrestrial, what we look like. And Carl Sagan began that type of thing, sending that gold disc out on a Voyager many years ago, with pictures of us and all kinds of things on physics and some music and all kinds of things that would tell an ET type individual where we are and what we do and things about us, and making us a great target for an advanced civilization. But that said, so representing us, but also our design is really pretty good for being a robot in outer space and looking like a human, with the hands and the feet and the vision and the hearing. So it's not a bad design anyway. But we're already using robots with kids, watching them. We're using robots with the elderly, watching them and taking care of them. They're using robots that look like us at shopping malls in Japan that look like us or them, and can speak like 26 languages. Who can do that? And they don't have to take a potty break. So there's all kinds of things that are useful. China's using them actually to give the news. It's not a person you're looking at sometimes, it's a robot. And so that's just going to get more and more. And so that you talk about nuclear disasters, we have to have robots to rescue people and to survey what's gone on. Wars, no doubt, is going to be robots in a variety of forms, aerial as well as on the ground. But I don't know that we're going to have ground troops as we know them in the future. Plus, we're also just flipping the coin. We're making people more like machines. I mean, we already have improved prosthetics if you've lost your leg or your arm. They have ways for people to work their fingers when they've lost that part of their body. We have ways that there's a quadriplegic who can think with electrode inserted in his brain that he wants his arm to lift up a glass of beer, and he can do it when he can't make his arm do it without sending these electric waves out, like to some type of machine that converts it to the hand movement. beginning of controlling people's minds, maybe. I mean, science fiction's loaded with these things, but they're going to be talking. If you've seen Data on Star Trek, they're going
Sure.
to be talking, looking like us.
Um,
That's the short answer.
okay. Well, AI is a reality. And I've had this conversation with science fiction writers where it's still benign because AI does not have its own agenda. And once AI is smart enough to create its own agenda, then that's when things can be dangerous. And we'll have, the scenarios of the Matrix or the Terminator or something like that. But you're suggesting it the other way around, right? That we're becoming more like machines rather than machines are becoming more like us, which machines are.
We're
Yeah.
becoming more like machines, and I go into a long list of things that we do, including implants and things like that. But we're becoming more like machines, and we're going to have implantable eyes probably that are mechanical. But machines becoming more like us and AI becoming more like us is a fact, and it's happening. And if you read people like Ray Kurzweil, who's a famous writer along this line, he's predicted that AI will reach the same level as a human being, in the next 20 or 30 years. He's changed the date a couple times, but the question is not so much being a human and acting like a human, but can they have emotions? And going back to your first question, is the agenda has a lot to do with the programmer. And so if it's being programmed by somebody who's our enemy at this time, say China, which could easily become one, or Russia, or who knows, Iran, and they can program these robots to do some bad things, they're going to do the agenda they've been programmed to, and they're going to do the agenda that the bad guys made them do. And so you don't have to have a robot create its own agenda. That's going to really be a problem, and that's way beyond the time you and I will be around. But maybe they will be able to, and maybe we're going to destroy the earth and they're the only survivors, robots. And so the future of life of sorts in the future might be robots, but that's science fiction. I do think they're not going to be able to be creative in the sense of writing plays and creating solutions to problems, say taking care of kids or maybe writing really good books. They can write some short novels already, but they don't have. They're not sentient. They're not able to probably really be there as an individual, to be compassionate, to be sympathetic, to be prayerful, to be imaginative, uh, to be able to change your opinion about stuff. Also, knowing what we have is an ability to know that we're in here and I know you are something within you. There's a soul or a spirit or something in you that you exist above and beyond the mechanics. And it's like the robot looking in the mirror. Is that another robot or is that me? We're better at that, and we will always be better at that. I tell people to bring a safety pin. Always carry a safety pin. Ask them, a robot, if I can prick your finger. If they bleed, you got a person, and that's not this day or tomorrow, but in the future. And there's all kinds of ways to challenge robots about AI that are out there, and they're usually disposed of after they come out and are recommended. And the next thing you know, well, that might not work either. What we're looking at right now is more somewhat looking like human beings going to outer space, somewhat looking like human beings fighting wars and saving lives. But I would easily predict they'll look like and act like us, and they're going to be hard to tell apart from us. Make a phone call. Some of the corporations, you almost feel like you're talking to a person. Now, in fact, there's an AI program to treat people with post stress problems, PTSD, and other problems with depression, where they actually are talking to somebody like on a phone, but it's on a microphone or speaker, and it's actually as if it's a real person there, and they get to like this whatever this thing is, and it's loaded with good advice and good questions, and that's the early form. So yeah, I think robots creating their own agenda is further down the road, if at all, other than minor things, but doing the agenda of someone else, you bet. I wrote a book called Murdoch, which was about a malevolent computer in a hospital a long time ago. So if one were to read it, they'd say, geez, this guy doesn't know much about robots. But that was probably in the 80s. But I still feel the same about malevolent computers. My first four books were novels. The first one sold 350,000 copies, was bought for movies twice, but they couldn't get it casted right, and finally the phone quieted down. But it became a book for hearing impaired and Reader's Digest Book of the Month. Then I wrote two medical spoofs, which I laughed all the way through, and I guess nobody else is laughing at, but I get some people who like it. Some of these are available on Amazon. And then I went into this trilogy, and I think I'm going to do a fourth one that has to do with intelligent design. When you go back and try to figure out how things really happen and try to explain the human body in particular, that's what got me into it. The human body is so complicated. As you get down layer after layer to the submicroscopic, it's incredibly complicated. And I don't think it could happen the way people think it happened. Or I believe in a God or an intelligent designer. But my books are scientific in a sense. They're not religious. And I belong to something called the Discovery Institute in Seattle. And that's I'm a fellow there. That's a lot of PhDs who are doing research along this line and showing how there's information systems in cells that just couldn't have come about spontaneously or with evolution.
Okay. Well, Doctor, we have to wrap this up. We've gone over already. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yeah, I always get asked that, and I'm sorry, but you can go to Amazon.com and look under Jeffrey with a G, G-O-F-F-R-E-Y, Simmons, like the mattress. You'll get me, and you get all my books, and What Darwin Didn't Know is the first one, Billions of Missing Links, the second one, and presently, Are We Here to Recreate Ourselves?
Okay, super. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was interesting. I know we could have gone on a lot longer, but maybe we'll have you back.
Thank you.